The Kraft Music Hall will not be presented, so we may bring you a Bob Hope comedy special.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Alex is a brand new graphic novel coming out from Marvel and Abrams Books. Fantastic Four, Full Circle. It comes out September 6th. It's a rainy night in Manhattan, and not a creature is stirring except for the Thing, Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These carrion creatures, composed of negative energy, come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system. But for what purpose? And who is behind this untimely invasion? The Fantastic Four have no choice but to journey to the Negative Zone, an alien universe comprised entirely of antimatter, risking not just their own lives, but the fate of the cosmos. Fantastic Four, Full Circle is the first long-form work written and illustrated by acclaimed artist Alex Ross, who revisits a classic Lee Kirby story from the 60s and introduces the storyline for a new generation of readers. Bold, vivid colors, his trademark visual storytelling, Ross takes Marvel's first team of superheroes to places only he can illustrate. The book also features a special poster jacket with the front flap unfolding to reveal an all-new fully painted origin story of the Fantastic Four. Again, Fantastic Four, Full Circle, out September 6th. For more details, go to AlexRossArt.com. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Always happy to welcome Dave Marquez back to Word Balloon. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, man. Good to see you, too. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Have you dipped your toe yet into the convention circuit beyond? Did you even do Rose City this year?
I haven't done anything. I'm back in Austin now, so Rose City for me is a bit of a hike. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, actually, right before COVID hit, not knowing obviously that it was coming, like I wasn't in communication with the secret labs or anything, but my wife and I were expecting our second kid and all her family's back here, so we kind of pulled the plug on the West Coast, and then we're living with my in-laws when COVID hit, so it actually worked out pretty okay as far as that goes. But but no, as far as conventions, no, I haven't been to a convention probably in 3 or 4 years at least. I got 2 little ones at home, and just daddying and working is full time. So maybe 2023 will be the year. We'll see if I dip my toes back in a little bit.
Yeah, and shame on me, David. You did mention last time we talked that you went to Austin. I totally forgot. So
you talked to a lot of people, man. So no worries.
Well, absolutely though, and certainly we're open to talk about some of your past runs on DC, things like Justice League and Marvel, your wonderful run on Iron Man, for example. But we're also here today to talk about your new webcomic that you're doing. Mm-hmm. And let's see, it's right here, The Unchosen. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, let's talk about the platform that The Unchosen is on. And that's Zest, help me out.
Zest World, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're kind of brand new on the landscape. It's a similar-ish deal to what Substack has been doing. A lot of people will be aware, a lot of really high-profile creators, writers, kind of primarily, were brought on board by Substack to kind of just experiment a bit in the space with doing, comics through the web, since that's now how we digest everything, right? And with the exception of, Comixology, there have been a couple places. There's Tapas, there's
Webtoons.
Webtoons is, I was looking for it. It was run away from me.
No worries, man.
Which is massive in spite of the fact that it seems to have very little kind of crossover into what we kind of experience as comics within the direct market and the superhero comics world. So Zest World is doing a similar kind of deal, although they're focusing a lot on artists, kind of doing their own deal. Now, it's not just artists, it's also writer teams. Alex Segura, who I know we both know, is the one who kind of brought me in.
Oh, cool. Pete
But
Tomasi is there,
yeah,
Amanda Connor, and Jimmy Palmiotti, and Justin Gray, and Phil
Phil
Noto is there.
Jimenez,
Who'd you say?
Phil Jimenez,
Phil
and
Jimenez. Oh, great.
Eric Canetti.
Good.
So a bunch of really, really good folks. Great
Top
artists.
Absolutely.
And for a lot of us, it's like, a lot of us working artists in the industry, we have stories that have been kind of bouncing around in our heads we want to do. And this has been a great opportunity to kind of really kind of scratch that itch and for me, work on a story that's been just percolating for, close to a decade probably in my head. And it was just, great timing. I was coming up to the end of my DC contract. So I just left an opportunity to work on it. So the short version is Zestworld is offering subscription-based web comics where each creator has their own kind of like newsletter kind of style thing. It's somewhere between like a Substack and a Patreon kind of mix. But the cool thing they're doing is, and this is kind of a recent decision they've made that I am very happy they're doing, because I was hoping they would go in this direction, is all the comics will be made available to read for free. Now, as an incentive for folks to consider some of the paid tiers, which again is kind of what helps keep the lights on and produce the material. Paid subscribers, I think for most of it starts like $7 a month, get early access to all the stuff, and as well as exclusive benefits. So like, behind the scenes stuff, commentary, seeing things from the sketch stage, some more direct creator fan interaction, but also they get early access to read the comics for free. So for instance, for my comic, The Unchosen, the prologue, which is kind of a little teaser image, is up there, and it's there for everyone to read. And I just launched the first chapter, and it's still in that kind of early access phase for the paid subscribers. But next Friday, so I guess not the 14th, on 21st, it'll go live for everyone to read.
Cool.
And I hope to get to the point where I'll be releasing it every 2 weeks. I think it'll probably be 3 weeks before the next one is out, just as I kind of get things moving. But the ball's rolling. I've written the full first issue's worth. I'm drawing chapter 3, 4 right now. So this is a little bit different kind of in terms of production than regular comics, where oftentimes, well, when the trains are running properly, things are done 6 months ahead of time, 4 months ahead of time. In this case, it's much more like a traditional webcomic. As I'm producing it, you're seeing it very soon thereafter. But I have a really great team. Marissa Louise, who's an old friend of mine, is doing the color, and a guy named DC Hopkins, another old friend of mine, is doing lettering and design. I love coloring myself. I don't have time to, so Marissa's doing a bang-up job on it.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah, and the other cool thing is, and I know you've seen it, I sent it to you, and people, if you want to check it out, it's available through Zestworld.com. I'm on there, and I'm experimenting a lot with actually the vertical scroll format for this comic. So
yes, I noticed that. Absolutely, man. The vertical scroll. Yeah, go
on. So as I'm producing the comic, and I can get to kind of what it's about and all that in a second. They kind of gave us the option. You can either publish it as traditional comic pages, just kind of serially down the page. But as I tried that out, and then was comparing that and did a ton of research into what's being done in Webtoons and other places, we are always moving around on mobile devices. And as I love the comic page does not look great on a phone. On a tablet, sure, it works. Yes. On a phone, not so much. And I'm not a huge fan of the whole guided view thing that they do on Comixology. It does the job, but I feel it pulls me out. I'm always rotating the phone and doing all this stuff. But I found the vertical scroll thing, it provided a really interesting, set of opportunities for storytelling, which is by far like what I love the most about comics. Is just, I'm a storyteller more than I am like a pinup artist or anything like that. And I found that the way that vertical scroll comic works in terms of pacing and in terms of the reading experience was very intuitive for me as a storyteller. And I found it's very similar in a lot of ways to like storyboards or like animation film. That kind of playing with time as you scroll down, having control over it, that just felt very natural to me. And so I've been playing around with that. Once all collected, I may put it all into a physical trade. Because I still love print comics and I don't want to abandon that. But But I'm enjoying the opportunity to kind of experiment with this slightly different format while still telling a good comic book story.
Very cool. Zestworld, is it mostly a North American thing? Because Webtoons, certainly, as you say, very big, but it hasn't crossed over to North American comic fans as much as it has globally. And I know, obviously, Webtoon started as a South Korean product, right, I believe. So, I mean, what is Zestworld doing in terms of making awareness to, the global audience or the North American audience?
Yeah, I mean, they're a startup, and so it's a lot of this is we're all kind of figuring out as we go. But the approach they're taking is they want to launch and kind of prove the platform with the talent they bring on at the very beginning, which is why you have big names like Jimmy Palmiotti, Phil Jimenez, Eric Canetti, myself, Jim Mahfood is doing one as well.
Yes, I saw Jim is doing one.
Jones on board, so a lot of really, really good talent.
Yeah.
And each of them are kind of doing something a little bit different from each other in terms of, some of us are doing the vertical scroll, some are doing kind of traditional. I know that Jimmy and Amanda are doing mostly, traditional comic pages and stuff.
Yeah.
They're also dabbling in the idea of doing digital commissions. The idea of, it's almost like artist's alley on the internet. That's kind of the way I've been describing it, which is, it is its own unique space. It doesn't really exist anywhere else. And I think that it's the shape of it is changing a little bit as time goes on. We see what works, what doesn't work, what people seem to really respond to. And the one thing that I like a lot is specifically the idea of making so much of the content itself free, because we want comics to be accessible. And it's interesting, like the way that I don't know how to describe it. So the way that the Patreon community works, Substack, this, a lot of times when people choose, and I feel this way when I do it, because I support some people on Patreon, some Substack and stuff, it's whether I'm not really paying for the content, I'm paying because I want to support, I want to see more of this kind of stuff. And so we're really kind of putting hopefully our best foot forward of here is the thing that we love it. We hope you love it too. And if you love it, please support. That's kind of the approach we're taking with it. So I'm interested to see it. And they have other ideas that they're kind of building up in order to help support creators, whether it's we've been talking about doing prints, posters, this kind of stuff. So it's going to continue developing in terms of what kinds of I guess content is available, what kinds of merchandise is available. But it's still very, very early days, and we're all kind of figuring it out.
No, I understand. Again, we were talking off the air, and Alex Segura mentioned this to me. I'm gonna have to hit him up because I think I'm gonna have to talk to somebody from Zestworld and learn more about the company. And again, I appreciate any digital initiative. It's been a very interesting 22 years, I would say, around there in terms of where webcomics started and where we are now. You mentioned Substack, obviously. Is there a newsletter component of any sort with the comic?
Yeah, and so for a lot of the content, it's free. You may have to subscribe in order to actually be able to go into the website and dig through and read everything. But for instance, with mine, I kind of have 3 different tiers. There's the free tier. You sign up, and basically every week I send out a brief newsletter where I kind of just explain hey, here's what's been going on. Here's some of my comics that are coming out. Here's some extra art you might not see other places. And then, here's the really cool stuff that paid people are getting. And then the paid people get some really cool stuff on top of what I just described, as well as that early access to the comics. So it all comes along with the newsletter. I try not to be overbearing and I will say when all the Substack stuff launched, I signed up for all of them, and then all of a sudden my inbox was just flooded with stuff. And so I'm trying to find that the right balancing place where I'm keeping in touch with people, but I'm not just always kind of screaming in their ear. But yeah, there's definitely a newsletter attached. That said, if you just want to sign on, take a look through, and glance at the comics, that's fine too.
Here's a comment from the Vasic, and I hear what he's saying. He said, I've tried to experiment with the webtoon style of vertical scrolling. It's very different to layout than the traditional comic page, but you can do some interesting things with it, though. Absolutely. And as you said too, David, my concern with the initial digital comics was when it comes to your phone, you're dealing with a rectangle the size of a baseball card, essentially. And I was wondering what was going to happen with storytelling. And then the iPad came along, and the iPad is close enough to the size of a comic page where you can do other things. And as you said, Comixology came up with the guided view. I hear what you're saying. It sometimes takes me out of the story. So I do understand that. But as Vasek said, there are obviously interesting possibilities. And if people read your prologue of Unchosen, they get that beat by beat moment that I think you really illustrate in the prologue. So, and as we said, a week from Friday, chapter 1 will be available for free.
Yes, exactly.
So tell people about the basic story of the Unchosen.
Yeah, so I mean, the elevator pitch I've been describing it as, it's a bit like kind of Stranger Things meets The Matrix, and so the Unchosen is the story of Aida, who is the young lady that you see here in the middle. She's a 13-year-old girl, and I'm kind of playing with the trope we all know of the chosen one, and trying to kind of like take it apart a little bit. So, and I got a funny Bendis story attached to this as well, but so she is raised believing that she is essentially the chosen, or she's in an environment where she's been told that's what she is, and she has every reason to believe it. The people around her they have powers. She has greater powers, she's told, and she will be the one to save the world. Until a group of young magic wielding teenage superhero style characters show up and explain to her that, hey, so you've been told you're the chosen one? They told us we were the chosen one too. It's all bullshit, and we need to show you what the truth is. So playing a bit with the idea of like a bunch of reject chosen ones who are all pissed off at having been lied to. The story continues, and this is where I don't want to get into too much, spoilery, giving away the story, but there's a question also of whether or not these new people are also telling her the truth. And a lot of this is focusing on like the idea of personal agency and when other people have your best interests in mind or not. Are they using you, or are they actually trying to help you? And how does that play versus actually making decisions for yourself and driving your own narrative? And it plays with a lot of stuff. I've been playing in a bunch of different genres. I mean, this is kind of a love letter or drawing from a lot of the genre fiction that I love. So it's an occult-ish, supernatural, sci-fi kind of superhero-y stories. It's kind of mashing all that. There's a good horror element in it, cosmic horror, pulling on some Lovecraftian themes. It's also it's a bit autobiographical as well in terms of diving into my own experience with spirituality, belief, disbelief, falling out of religion, all this kind of stuff. So there's I'm drawing on a lot of material, both in terms of fiction that I love, nonfiction that I love, personal experience. But the core of all of it is about really Aida and her journey and the relationships that she builds kind of along the way. Hopefully, and also some cool fights and awesome comic book art and all this stuff too.
Excellent. Are they on Earth, or is it a different world in any way?
Oh, it's Earth. Yeah. So it's okay. Alternate. I mean, it's not our world exactly.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm playing with a lot of
visuals
that we're all kind of familiar with. I mean, she's in a Catholic-ish school uniform. So I'm drawing a bit of that. It's I love anime, I love manga, and when I started drawing her, that's just what I drew on. So
yeah, that looks great. No, it's slightly different from your DC or Marvel stuff, and I wondered that you're kind of leaning into the anime manga kind of influence here, but it looks great.
Thank you, man. Yeah, no, it's I'm a very I guess I'm very ADHD in my art, and I'm always getting bored and frustrated with the last page that I drew, and I'm always trying to experiment with new stuff. And I found that, so I've also been working on a create on property with Brian Bendis for a number of years now that we're going to get done with at some point, but we've been working on it. And as I'm working on that project, I found myself just leaning heavier and heavier into this cartoonier style. And I find myself now, like, it feels more natural drawing that way. And it's just, okay. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do in the mainstream comics, like it bleeds in, it bleeds out. It's all it's at the end of the day, I want to make cool art that feels nice to draw.
Sure.
And so it's I'm constantly evolving, and what's happening in this book is a part of that continued evolution in style.
It shows, man. What was it the Joiners, your 3D comic?
Yeah, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's the first time we talked. All right, and truly, if people have been following you, compare the Joiners to what you did at Marvel with things like Iron Man, to what you did at DC with Justice League, and where we are now with the Unchosen. No, I really appreciate that, man. And honestly, another favorite guy of mine, Stuart Immonen, is the same way, where it's like, yeah, I'm getting bored. All right, now I want to try something different. And again, that's great, man. Truly, I mean, I think that's amazing. It shows your versatility, and truly, I mean, the great thing is you've still got the roots of the storytelling that you're learning and able to do. But no, I think it's wonderful that you're trying these different ways of drawing.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's part of the joy for me in creating art. And Stuart, I mean, he's a huge inspiration for me creatively. And I look at the stuff that he's done. I forget the name of some of those very indie books that he's done with Catherine, but the range that he shows blows me out of the water. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. In fact, I even have whatever the Grass of Parnassus, his off the wall psychedelic kind of weird German existentialist, whatever, the absurdist comic. Yeah, if people aren't familiar, Stuart has done this amazing book called Grass of Parnassus. I don't know if there are any copies left available. It was printed in hardcover, and then the publisher stopped being a publisher.
Oh, geez.
So
I didn't realize.
Weird stuff. So if you can find a copy, it is crazy, strange, but really, really awesome.
There you go. Vasic agrees. He saw
it.
Hey, nice down under comment, and we certainly can talk about some of your greatest hits. Spedsy says you killed it on Civil War II. Beautiful stuff. And yes, good
thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a journey. I just realized, I guess it's 20. I've been in the industry now just about 10 years. Probably close on. I think maybe was it first published in 2012 or 2010? I can't remember. In any case, yeah, it's like right around my 10-year anniversary or so. So it's been a journey for sure. Yeah,
that's excellent, man. And obviously, you did mention earlier that, and Magic K wanted to know if you're working on Jinx World comics in the future. So I assume the Bendis project is a Jinx World imprint book.
Yeah. So the publish, like exactly how it's going to be published is something that it isn't cemented enough for me to be able to talk about. But yeah, Brian and I we have this book we've been working on for I swear to God 5 or 6 years. And it's like it's a little bit me, a little bit him, a lot of it's me. I've been working under contract in Marvel and then at DC, and I always thought I have a carve out and I'll find the time to work on it, and it never really happened. And then I had time, and then COVID hit, and the world went crazy. And
was that hard for you, Dave, to work during COVID? Was it paralyzing in any sort of way? I mean, obviously you say you had just uprooted the family, obviously,
right,
in Texas prior to it, and also second child. So I could appreciate all that real world stuff kind of getting in the way, and not, of course, wonderful that you have another kid and close to family again and everything. Yeah. But yeah, tell me about that COVID time. How was it?
Oh man, 2020 was a. Can I cuss on this? I can't remember.
Of course you can.
Yeah, it was a clusterfuck, man. It was so. I mean, it was a perfect storm, and in a lot of ways, like we landed as well as we could have. We had just moved back to Austin, and we were living with my in-laws, who fortunately had space for this family of 3, and then very soon thereafter 4. And we were shopping for a house, and then we had the baby. The idea was we'd crash here, we'd have the baby, we'd start sleeping again, and then we'd move out and get our own place. Of course, COVID hit like the month my daughter was born, and so it was this crazy perfect storm of like. We were in a new place. We didn't have any of our normal stuff. We just had a brand new baby. My dog had died like a few months earlier. And then the world just went crazy. And all of a sudden we were all just held in this tiny, I mean, it wasn't a tiny house, but like 6 people in a house is a lot of people in a house.
Yeah.
And it's like, we didn't know, like, is it safe to leave the house with the baby? Like, do we have to do we have to wipe things down? my in-laws are older, so there's those kinds of concerns to worry about. So it's all this stuff going on. In the meantime, I was trying to we're operating on very little sleep. For anybody who's had a baby, you get no sleep. If you haven't had a baby, this is what you should know. You don't get any sleep for about the first 2 months, probably.
Sure.
So long story short is like within the first 6 months of 2020, I got next to nothing done. And I realized like, holy shit, I'm out of money. I need to start working on DC books again and start making some money. So like, especially because I got a baby to feed now and trying to buy a house. So anyways, it was a mess. It was just an utter mess. And so it really derailed the plans to get this book that Brian and I have been working on and in love with for a number of years. And I got maybe a third of what I wanted to done during those first 6 months. And so it really kind of threw us for a loop. Turned out it may have been a blessing in disguise because the opportunities for what we can do with this book that we're working on have grown. And so I'm very close to finishing it now, which I'm very excited by. And so when it's finally done, then we can get on and officially talk about it. And so hopefully Brian doesn't bite my head off for giving some inside baseball stuff. I don't think I've given anything too crazy away. So
very cool, man. Well, we look forward to it, and obviously when the announcement comes, I'll be talking to both of you about it. Jay Gomez Gomez, excuse me, if I'm not saying it right. I'm a big fan of your work. I'd love to see you on Birds of Prey one day. That'd be cool.
I love the characters. One of the characters I was shocked at how much fun I had drawing when working on Justice League was Black Canary. The tights are a huge pain in the ass, but it's one of these funny things. Like it's like everyone learns to draw the Batman cowl in a certain way, and learning your system for drawing the tights was one of these weird little intricate comic artist things. I finally gave her a logo on her chest, which hopefully people like. I liked it. I thought
I have to go back and look at that. That's great, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's funny. I feel like unlike back in like the 70s and 80s, costumes are always changing nowadays, and having a costume that sticks around pretty unlikely. I've seen a lot of people start to draw the costume now, which is great. So hopefully this one sticks around for a little bit. I did a Namor design right before I left Marvel that kind of stuck around for a while as well. So it's like here and there, I make my mark on places, and hopefully that's one that sticks for a little bit.
Well, and certainly, God, I should have grabbed the image when you took over Iron Man. The upgrade you gave to the armor and everything, I thought was a really cool design that still evoked the classic look, but clearly was a difference. And I think
thanks, man.
That was great. Absolutely, man. And listen, I love the classic Black Canary outfit. I remember in the 80s when she had almost she had a logo back then in the Bwahaha Justice League stuff that I imagine McGuire gave or whatever. But but I could appreciate, drawing the tights and the fishnets and everything. It depends on how tight or how loose the crosses are in the fishnets and everything. So I can
for sure.
Absolutely. That's great. Oh my God. Did you look at any specific artists that did Black Canary before?
I mean, Toth was always a huge influence. I mean, his pages, I have a hard drive just full of comic art that I found on like Heritage Art and other places where they had nice big high-res scans and stuff. I was able to find a bunch of Toth stuff. And again, my stuff looks nothing like Toth. He had an efficiency of line that I can only ever strive for. And I'm a very busy artist, so in sense of the way that I draw. So a different approach. But he's always been kind of, I don't know, it's that right mix of like sexy but not overly sexualized kind of stuff. So he was a really big influence. And then Otto Schmidt is another guy who has done a lot of stuff recently, who is, again, an artist very unlike me, but again, has that kind of very like a very clean and like sexy, but not like overly TNA-y approach. So they were both like spiritual inspiration and nothing else. Like that's the art that I always had kind of posted up as like, this is the vibe I'm trying to go for. I don't know if I nailed it, but that was what I was drawing from.
Well, Otto, I loved on with Matt Rosenberg on their Hawkeye miniseries.
Yeah,
that was kind of my real awareness of Otto, so I can definitely appreciate that. Usab says, says Killing Time was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
back in the day.
So Killing Time is the Batman book I just finished with Tom King.
Well,
and
shame on me. Of course it is.
no,
Yes,
no, no. Yeah, man, that was, oh man, yeah, that was a trip. 'Cause, like, Tom is somebody who I've been wanting to work with for a long time, and it's writers. One of the things I envy most about the writers in the industry is the opportunity to work on just so much different stuff. Given the opportunity, some writers only, Dan Slott works on like one book, maybe two at a time, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But writers, just because of the nature of the work, they can pick and choose. They can date. They're like, the polyamorous swingers of the comic industry creatively, right? Like, they can just get around as much as they want. Whereas us artists, we're like serial monogamists. So that's kind of what my career's been like.
But it takes a month to draw a monthly book. I mean, I get that. So
yeah, man.
For the most part. So no, you can't bounce around the way a writer can and everything.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, there's some folks like Sean Phillips, Mike Oming, there are a few other people who just like have this, their approach to the craft and their style allows them to just draw really quickly, and that's just not me. I'm not Travis Charest. Like, I'm not like, it doesn't take me like 10 years to draw a page. Beautiful pages, but
beautiful pages.
But it takes me a while. In any case, yeah. So Tom is someone I've been wanting to work with for a long time. And so when I came to DC, Brian, of course, is the one who really convinced me to come over to DC originally. And it just so happened that the first opportunity that really kind of popped up wasn't to work with him. It was to work with Josh Williamson on Batman Superman. And then I worked on the Jinx World thing for a little bit. And then I needed to work on DC stuff again. And then Brian, I did Justice League. And originally the plan, and I think I mentioned this last time I was on, I don't remember. In any case, Brian and I were going to continue on Justice League as a team, but then Ben Abernathy, the editor of the Batman books, approached me, and he had already approached me previously about doing backing up Jorge Jimenez on the Batman Monthly, which at the time I turned down because I was working with Brian. And like, that's a hard thing to say no to say no to the ongoing Batman title. But he said, actually, there's this other Batman thing where it'd just be you and Tom King's writing. And so Brian and I had a heart-to-heart. I feel like I broke his heart a little bit, but it's like, I came to DC. I could do my own Batman book. Like, you did your Batman book with Nick Darrington. Let me do my Batman book. And
sure.
So he gave his blessing. And it was cool, man. I mean, working with Tom it's very different than working with Brian. This is different from almost any other writer I've worked with the exception of when I did Joiners with RJ Ryan.
Yeah.
I got the whole script for the entire thing on day one, like all 6 issues. This is the way he works. Like, unlike many other comic writers who I guess will, if they're working on 3 different books, every month they have, script for book 1, 2, 3, and then script for book 1, 2, 3, and they work on each one serially. I guess, I don't know whether Tom was like this for all of his books, but at least for this, he wrote the whole thing over the span of, a couple of months, however long it took, and then handed it over, and then I got to run with it for, about a year to draw the 6 30-ish page, issues. And it was a trip, man. Like, Tom, as anybody who's read his book knows, like, he plays a lot with structure in terms of the narrative of his books. And this was one where it's a very convoluted, interwoven story of multiple different story threads where each page is a different scene. But when you get to the end of the issue, you're like, okay, there's like 4 or 5 scenes that have been interwoven in an interesting narrative way where the different scenes play off each other. And at first I tried actually mapping out like all the different timelines and getting them, well, this is happening on this day, this is happening on this day. I want to have timelines. I'm like, no, fuck it. I'm going to draw this scene and then put them in the right order, draw this scene. So I had to kind of simplify it for myself a little bit. But it was a really fun experience. I got to draw Batman and Catwoman and the Riddler, and turns out I like drawing the Riddler and I like making him sexy. So like, that worked out well. No, it was cool. It was a really, really cool experience. I got to work with Alejandro Sanchez, the colorist again, who's one of the best in the industry. Very blessed to work with him. And it was a really, really great experience. It was a great way to kind of wrap up my DC contract. I hope to work with Tom again. I hope to work with, a bunch of writers again. Although I will say, like, after having worked with it's interesting. Like, I love working on Marvel and DC books. This is the stuff I grew up reading. This is what I always wanted to work on. But I didn't realize until I started working on something that I was writing and I was drawing, like, this is the most fun I've had in comics since I first started doing it professionally, which is its own unique experience. It's like my dream I finally accomplished. And then, working with Brian on Spider-Man, this is my dream I finally accomplished. And working on an event with Civil War II, this is my dream. Working on Batman, like, all of these are huge milestones and goals that I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And the other day I was drawing a scene and realized I had complete freedom to do whatever the fuck I wanted, and it was just like the most amazing experience. Hopefully people will enjoy the book as much as I'm enjoying creating it. But it comes from that same place of love that carried me through the Marvel and DC stuff. And I'm not done with Marvel and DC. I'm doing covers for them. I hope to do, more art and hopefully some writing and drawing for them. Some opportunities have popped up for that. So things are good. I can't complain, man.
Well, and believe me, and again, I say this all the time. This is the relationship I find with comic creators. I wanted to work in commercial radio. I did for 30 years. I worked for very big companies like CBS. I got to do a lot of cool things here in Chicago, but doing the podcast is so satisfying. And without the confines of, in my case, it was a program director. Well, you can't do that. Don't do this. Right. Don't do that. Well, I don't have that anymore. And that's why you can swear on my show and things. I don't have to break every 6 minutes for a commercial and things like that. So I totally appreciate the joy that comes with creator owned. And as you say, that's great that you still find fun going back to DC or Marvel and doing, things. So I get all that. Regarding the Unchosen though, do you have an editor in any way to just kind of check out your stuff, or go ahead? All right.
Yeah, no, I had thought about it, and I may end up kind of going back in this position. For the time being, I really wanted to just explore it on my own, kind of put it that way. I do run it past people who I trust and who give me very good feedback. But I'm very stubborn, and again, this may bite me in the ass. We'll see. And I really wanted to be as free as possible with working on it. So,
you get it.
Like I said, it may be middle issue 2, middle issue 3. I'm like, okay, no, I need someone to help me keep it on the rails. That may well happen. We'll see. But for the time being, I'm writing and drawing, and then I'm working with someone to color and to do all the lettering and design. And one of these days, I will learn to truly trust delegating stuff to other people. I'm a control freak, and any colorist who's worked with me can attest to that. I'm not overbearing, but like it's hard for me to let go of stuff.
Hey man, again, this is why it's just you and me talking and not a co-host. And people are like, you should get a producer, and I'm like, I know what I want, and I don't know if I can explain it a lot of times, and so it's like, no, it's fine. I enjoy every aspect of this process, as I'm sure you do your own process. So USAP says killing time allowed the art to bounce around between times and places, so there was some freedom there. Yeah, did you? Was it harder? Because as you said, you just addressed it as okay. Each part as it. I assume as it played out script wise, that's how you drew. Was it hard? Like, was it easy to keep whatever flashbacks and the changes within the flashbacks? To keep the aesthetic for each time period and everything? Was that a challenge or?
Yeah, no, it definitely was a challenge. The way that I dealt with that, kind of like I said, was when you have a thing where it's kind of like, let's call it, there's like, the A plot, B plot, C plot, D plot, whatever. Yeah. And so it would go like, A, B, C, D, C, D, A, B, all over the place, all kinds of different orders. And so, yeah, the way that I controlled that for myself was just like, well, I know that throughout this entire scene, to keep it consistent, I'm gonna draw that all at once, because one of the things I hate the most is having to bounce between different thoughts, for lack of a better term. So like, I have a terrible habit of saying yes to like almost any opportunity that comes across my desk, which I'm very fortunate that I have opportunities, but it means that I always feel I'm being pulled in many different directions. A lot of people can relate to this in their own lives. And imagine if then this one project is doing that exact same thing to you. You know, if, the benefit of being able to stick to one scene at a time is like, okay, it's one environment. I know what that looks like. It's one character. I know how that character looks. I don't have to constantly be pulling out new reference and, you know, switching gears in my head for, oh, now I'm drawing the Joker. Now it's, you know, it's nighttime, not daytime, yada, yada, yada. So I found a way of controlling it in that way. But it's definitely a challenge. And, you know, there's one scene that got away from me a little bit, and I only realized after the fact that, like, oh, it probably shouldn't be a moonlit night at 5 p.m. But yeah, it's things happen. I have two little kids.
Sure.
I don't sleep much.
It was the winter.
So.
It was the
Exactly.
winter.
There you go. Northern latitudes. It was winter. Yeah, exactly.
No, I get it. That's excellent, man. Too funny. Well, what else? What's you know? I mean, God, having the two kids and everything. I would imagine. I don't know what you're watching as far as what's streaming wise and stuff. What do you say?
Well, that's funny, man. Like, for a long time, I didn't have a ton of free time. And like, literally, it would be like, you know, work all day, then kids, then go back to work, and then crash out at like 11, and then we'd just watch repeat for, you know, 6 days a week.
Sure.
I was able to, one of the benefits of having the end of the DC contract is like I forced myself to start taking evenings off again for a while. So what have I been watching? I started watching, I'm a huge fantasy fan. So yeah, I was watching Rings of Power. And I'll be honest, I'm a little disappointed by it. I really, really, really wanted to like it, and it just, it didn't quite sell me on believable. I never had the suspension of disbelief, for lack of a better term. I'm really enjoying the new Game of Thrones show. I have some concerns, but I like the writing a lot. The time jumps in there are a little bit frustrating. Chicago. So I started watching The Bear, which people have been saying such great things about. Yeah. And my wife had to kind of bail during the first episode. It was just too stressful. Like, you know, she used to work in the service industry. She's like, no, fuck this shit, I'm out. Or I watched the pilot. Yeah, man, Basic. I watched the pilot fairly recently. Really good. Really good.
Yeah, I'm enjoying Andor. The Bear, you know, hey, being Greek.
Yeah.
You know, the family business is food. So yeah, I could certainly relate in the fact that it was Chicago. And no, it's a really great show.
It is stellar, man. It's so damn good.
It reminds me of my childhood when I worked for my father downtown and yeah, waiting tables and running the cash register and stuff. So yeah, it's fun. It really is fun.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because like
I should say, you know.
Oh yeah. No, I mean it's
pretty intense also. You know,
it's very well. It's interesting because, like, you know, towards the end of the first episode into the second episode, I haven't finished the season yet. Like the pace kind of settles down a little bit and lets you kind of start appreciating the character interactions and stuff. And it has that certain kind. What was the other show I'm thinking of? It has such an earnest, heartwarming, like soft, gooey center to it. Yeah. That's wrapped by all this intensity and stress and stuff. And again, like as a storyteller, like, it's impossible to consume media and not analyze it, not try to learn from it. And so I've been really trying to, as much as possible, eat healthy, only eat the good shit, you know? And The Bear has been really, because like, it's such a small story in the sense of like, it's life in a kitchen, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
But there's such a richness to the characters and to the narrative and the way they control. I mean, the performances are amazing and the writing is great, and so and it's so true. Like it's real, real life, real people, real characters.
100%, man.
And so yeah, it's I've been paying very close attention to it. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Really that's terrific, and I agree with you on all of that. Vasic says with Andor, you'll benefit from watching it all at once. Yeah, I agree. But I'm enjoying as much as I appreciate Jedis and the power of the Force and all that. It is really nice to focus on the rebel side and the people. And I mean that's what I always enjoyed when both Dark Horse back in the day and now Marvel. I like those stories. I mean, Ostrander wrote so many great stories that didn't involve the Force and Jedis, and they were just as interesting. So Useb has a question for you.
Yeah.
Have you picked up any storytelling tricks by working with some of the top writers like Bendis, King, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different answers pop in my head. I mean, on the short tricks, the thing that Brian always says, Brian Bendis, and I think this is probably one of the most important nuggets of how to approach writing as a craft, is that characters always come first. All of us as fans and as creators, like, we love the world building. We love creating these like imaginary worlds. What are the powers? How do they work? What are the mechanics of it? And that can be incredibly important stuff to do. And it is important. At the end of the day, though, you have to care about the characters, and like really, that's the reason why you stick around. Like,
sure.
With Andor as an example, I mean, like right away, there's so much intrigue and there are questions about why the characters are doing what they do. You start caring about their plight. I was even thinking about how in Andor, similar to like as in Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, which I also just took a rewatch of both those shows recently. Which again, I'm trying to eat healthy, right? This is it's dark shit, but it's good shit. With Andor, right off the bat, you get the impression like, man, like he is fucking everyone's life up around him, and like they are right. He should not be doing this stuff. They should not trust him. Like, but you're rooting for the guy who you know everyone else is correct about. Like, they are doing wrong. In the new Game of Thrones show, like it's kind of the same thing. Like the protagonist, like, no, they are making decisions that's fucking shit up for everybody, but we're rooting for them in spite of that. That is great writing when you care, when you're on board for the character, even though they're a fuck up, right? Even though you know they're the ones causing the problems. So characters always first, and so you know, with the Unchosen, like there's a lot of the world building that's gone into it, but at the end of the day, on any given page, it's the characters that are driving you through. And I want to go down rabbit holes. I'm going to stop myself. The other interesting thing, and this is true not just for comics, but for kind of any media, and this is more of kind of a trick. I don't know what's a trick technique, maybe. So Dan Brown, the author of Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code and stuff. Yeah. Plenty of critiques can be levied at him for being a little bit popcorny and maybe not like the highest brow of writers. It's very enjoyable, very addictive writing. Yeah. And one of the things that I've heard him say that has a direct parallel in comics that has also been told to me explicitly by Brian is he would always end his chapters on a question mark. Every chapter ends on a cliffhanger. And this is something that's true of almost any serialized fiction. It's true in TV. It's true in comics, especially. You know, if you never thought about it, it's very obvious. The last page of a comic is a cliffhanger, always. You want to pick up the next. You pick up the next issue in order to figure out what happens.
Sure.
Every page is the same thing, and especially every page turn. So like the little tricks like that, like again, the last panel of a 2-page spread, the bottom panel, like there should be a question. What the fuck happens next to get you to turn the page? And so
absolutely, man. No, 100%.
Yeah, so like that's a very kind of like structural, technical kind of like trick, but it's something that if you've paid attention to the media you consume, all the good ones do it.
Right.
Getting the audience to ask questions is one of the best ways to drive the narrative forward. So I'm trying as much as possible. Like hopefully people will see, like again, like kind of pulling up the skirt to show you what's going on, like. The prologue hopefully is a question. You want to figure out what happens next. The end of the first chapter, when you read it, like there's a big question at the end of it, and then hopefully if you're a good storyteller, you also then pay off enough to get people to satisfy, you know, people's curiosity while also giving them a new carrot to chase. You know, if there's such a temptation to want to here's all the cool shit I came up with and here it is, but that's where having fun doing the world building is different from telling the story. So, yeah, it's a, hey, who knew writing was complicated and a little bit hard, but I'm figuring it out. So,
well, honestly, man, I'm thrilled that you're doing it, and it's great that you're given this opportunity to do it all as far as full story and art and everything. I think that's great. I think The Boys on Amazon is a great example of what you're talking about in terms of every episode ending on well, Jesus, now what's going to happen?
Well, I haven't read 3 or watched all of 3 yet, so no spoilers. I'm glad to know that it keeps going. Yeah,
don't worry. Yeah, you'll be happy. It's truly, I have to say, of all the superhero stuff we're getting lately, and likely too, much like Word Balloon being able to swear and stuff. I appreciate the R-ness, I mean, adult content that we're getting, as graphic as it gets, even as sexual as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, this is interesting, and they Kripke and Seth Rogen really get what Garth and Derek came up with, and also totally. Are telling their own story at the same time. I was fortunate enough to talk to Garth on a panel at Terrificon back in August.
Oh yeah,
and so many of the questions from the audience had to do with the TV show. And people were like, no, and the great thing is Garth got it, and also a lot of it was, gee, you did much more interesting stuff with the same broad strokes of the series. Why didn't they go in the direction that you went into? And it's like, it's budget, it's so many different things, but also I appreciate that what we're watching is slightly different. I like Superman and Lois on CW. It's a great Superman story, but it is kind of its own thing. And God, they did with again, I don't want to spoil, but what they did with the Bizarro World in the last season was really intriguing, very different from the greatness of and the comedy that comes with Bizarro World in the comic books and stuff, and even some of the tragedy that they've played with in recent years. But it was its own thing, and it's like, no, that's interesting. So I kind of welcome those. She-Hulk is like that too. I love what they're doing on She-Hulk. I don't understand the people that are complaining about She-Hulk. And also, it's interesting that some of the complaints are coming from the left and not just the right, and the usual bullshit you're getting from some of the lunkheads in there. And not all the lunkheads, or not all the people on the right, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. Like I'm a huge proponent for creative exploration, and I am never. No, she had never. I remember what it was like seeing my favorite book, comic, whatever it was, adapted into something new, like, starting in the early 2000s or so, and it not being exactly like the thing that I had before. And I remember that, like, the sense of disconnect in the sense of, but I wanted this thing. And it happened before I became a professional, but it became, I think, most pronounced after I became a professional, of appreciating that the thing that I have is the thing that I have, and I can enjoy that. And I'm going to try to meet new stuff as it's presented to me on its own terms, and try to evaluate it, on its own terms. And part of that, I think, certainly comes from, like, I mean, I've been very fortunate that when my stuff has been reviewed, generally speaking, is pretty positive. I'm lucky that way. But there's a tendency among critics and fans, and I say that also as somebody who is a fan of all the media I consume. There's a tendency to, like, well, but I would have done it differently, or that's often kind of the starting point.
Oh, sure.
And I think that very much misses the point, or it does a disservice to all the people who put their blood, sweat, and tears into the work itself. And so, like for the boys, like for any of these adaptations, it's like, it's important to accept it as, like, this is its own thing. What are they trying to do, and how do they try to do that thing they're trying to do? Now, that doesn't mean I like all of it, right? I mean, there's plenty of content that it just isn't for me, right? But that's also kind of where I leave it. If something is not my cup of tea, it's not my cup of tea. If someone else loves it, good, awesome. We all, I mean, like, look, everybody deserves to enjoy something, right? And as long as it's not hurting people actively, fucking love it. Like, I am not a huge fan of Britney Spears. God bless it. I love that so many people love Britney Spears, right? I was about to dive into a Kanye thing. I'm not going to, but, like, it's I like old Kanye. I will say that. I do want old Kanye back. I will say that. I'm comfortable saying that.
Fair enough. I'll even confess that my big disappointment is in live action new Star Trek. I'm a dying in the wool classic fan. I was, a kid in the 70s watching the reruns when they were first on. I have a very faint memory of being a very small child and my parents watching the original series on NBC. I remember it wasn't registering beyond what just the visual, and Spock, you can't help but know who the hell Mr. Spock is. But I'm not feeling it for a lot of the live. I like Strange New Worlds, actually, the latest show.
I think it's great. I think that show is great. Yeah.
Yeah. But Discovery didn't do it for me. I have hopes. I don't know if you saw the trailer. I have hopes for the third season of Picard. I love Patrick Stewart, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
see him do anything. And I love his other work
Yeah.
that he's done, especially in the last 10 years. Really interesting stuff. But I do think that the first 2 seasons of Picard were frankly confusing from a storytelling standpoint.
I didn't enjoy them. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There you go, man. I mean,
Yeah.
but again, I think the good news, and I've been talking about it, Terry Matalas, who's running season 3 of Picard, and that trailer we saw this weekend from New York, and Terry's saying all the right stuff. It's like, I have a good feeling about this 3rd season coming up, that it's going to be what everyone really wanted, and to see the next gen cast kind of go on for one last ride, and a bit more focus as far as the story goes, unlike the last 2 seasons. So I'm hopeful. Discovery's its own thing. As you say, if people are a fan of it, that's great. Yeah. But it just kind of bums me out because I just don't think they get the real Star Trek feeling. And I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm in a very similar place as you. I mean, I grew up with TNG, and like I've seen all the TOS stuff, like the reruns and stuff, but
sure.
I mean, TNG was like my childhood comfort food, and for my wife too. And we actually, while we were dating before we got married, or maybe it was right before we got married, we rewatched the entire series, and we also watched. It was the original cast movies in TNG. That was my thing, and with the movies especially. The relationship between Bones and Kirk and Spock, like whatever the magic they had, but in any case, yeah, like I've had very, like for Discovery, there were moments that I really enjoyed, but tonally it was confusing to me, and they were trying to do this like the season long arc big story thing, which it can work, but for the story that they chose to tell just didn't really kind of do it for me.
I agree.
Picard, I loved the pilot. I thought the pilot had so much potential.
Yes.
And then it just felt really uneven after that. And totally some really, I don't know, like there's kind of weirdly inappropriate, lighthearted goofiness along the way that didn't seem to match with the kind of story they're trying to tell. Season 2, I don't know what I couldn't finish it. It was just, I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
And like Picard is, he's like my space daddy. Like,
sure,
it's hard to see. I appreciate they were trying to tell a new story with him.
Yes,
where he had changed and grown. I'm on board for all that stuff.
Yes,
but the specific way they're telling the story just didn't do it for me. I haven't seen any of the season 3 stuff you were talking about. I'm curious to see the trailer.
Yeah, I think it will intrigue you, and I think as Picard gets older, the benefit of the original cast. Making those movies and stuff.
Relationships,
yes, and they grew along with, as they got older. And they're, and you saw, I mean, Spock's trajectory from that first movie to where he is in the 2-part Next Generation episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man, that's a real story. And again, I would say that both Kirk and McCoy also have interesting things. With Picard, the first 2 seasons, he doesn't know these people. Yeah. So, I mean, you're told that he and Raffi have this relationship. They really don't show it. And it's like, okay. And again, it's like, no, I mean, you got that moment in the first season where, he visited Riker and Troy, and that was great. But we really needed more connection like that. And even the tease of season 2 with Guinan, and then, they were strangers again. And it's like, no, man, this is what I always go back to. Some of my favorite relationships in comics, like Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson.
Yeah,
Foggy knows Matt inside and out, and Foggy's one of those guys that, as Matt has his various changes and stuff, can get in his face and go, "You're fucking up, man." I know, because I've known you from day one, and no one else can talk to you the way I can. Lois can do that with Clark, and there are just certain relationships, and totally. I like the way that Tom has kind of made Selena and Bruce much closer and stuff. And it's like, no, it's and Alfred certainly with Bruce. I mean, you just need those kind of relationships of, hey, I know you're doing it wrong. And I just think, in the case of Picard, there were just too many strangers that, despite what they're telling us, we've known each other for a year and a half or whatever it was in the jump from season 1 to season 2. And I'm like, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Strange New Worlds I've really enjoyed, though. I feel like it it
Yeah.
there's something to the Trek formula, and not that everything has to be that episodic, self-contained monster of the week style storytelling, but like it is a quintessential Trek thing, or it's a vehicle to get you on board, right?
Right, they're missions. I mean, each week is like, all right, it's another mission. What are we doing? And I agree with you. I keep picking on my buddy. I won't name him, but I'm like, I don't like their choice of one story, one season. I prefer episodic. And the guy said, well, that's old fashioned TV. And I'm like, no, that's TV. I mean, now it's alongside the full season thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a good show that I think is doing well, and it's popcorn, but it's fun popcorn.
Sure.
The new Quantum Leap. I think.
I haven't checked it out. Okay.
Honestly, man,
I've seen the trailer,
I wasn't sure what they were going to do, and especially when it sounded like, well, we're doing our own thing. Well, they were kind of lying to us, because really it's a continuation of the original story. Even though there are new characters, there are definite callbacks, and at the center of it is what happened to Sam Beckett. We want to know what happened to Sam Beckett, and it's like, that's great. Ben Song, the new guy, is very charming on his own. Awesome. And they're following that Quantum Leap formula of, but at the same time doing the season long what's going on. But every week is a problem of the week. Okay, he's leapt into another body. What do we have to solve? While they're doing that, you're getting a lot more focus of what's happening back at Command Central.
Sure.
And part of the story is, like, what happened to Beckett? And Ben was supposed to be the Dean Stockwell Al observer, but he got information that made him leap instead of being the observer. So it's like, well, what is it? And that's the season long mystery of what we're trying to figure out. And I haven't watched last night's episode yet, but really, I was so delighted, and I cannot think of the last network TV show.
Right.
That it's like, oh, I got to watch this every week. And truly, like, it was so funny. I was hanging with a friend, and I'm like, oh yeah, Quantum Leap tonight. That's great, man. And I'm DVRing it, so I'll watch it at my own pace. But it's like, oh, that's so nice that there's an actual 4-network show that I'm like, oh, this is
excited to watch it. Yeah, that's true. Like, I haven't watched. I mean, I guess I've only been diving for the last probably 10 years into like the premium, dramas and stuff through HBO and all this kind of stuff. And not just for the titties, but it's for. But
it's better writing. It's better
acting. Usually. Yeah.
God, I was telling Brad Meltzer in the aughts, why isn't American television following the British pattern of, hey, we only have enough story for 6 episodes. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right, David. No, it is money. And it's making back the money that it costs to make the show. And that was old-fashioned TV of, we need 20 plus episodes a season. We need to get to 100 episodes so we can syndicate.
Syndication, yeah.
But it's a different world now. And now it is kind of like, well, again, I appreciate the idea of The Good Place, thank God, was the last network show that I liked. And it's like, hey, we only got a good 11 episodes for the season. Great. Because all of them are good, terrific episodes. That is my frustration with a lot of CW shows, is that they're still on the 20 plus episode per season model. And you just get a lot of meandering stories. And again, I think you're right. I felt this way about Discovery and Picard, where it's like, you got about a 6-episode idea and you're stretching it between 15 and 10 episodes.
Totally.
You don't have enough story.
I totally agree. And it's interesting too, because like one of the benefits of doing the episodic storytelling like you have for Strange New Worlds is like, when you have a big overarching story, you can weave that in the way you're describing with Quantum Leap, and they do with a lot of shows. And it's kind of the way that like when Deep Space Nine was kind of the first Trek show to kind of really start doing like a season long arc, right? And great show, but they were able to marry it to each episode is its own satisfying chunk. It's a meal. You sit down, you finish it.
Yes.
And I am full and satisfied. And quite frankly, like, I think whether it's because of technology and the way it's changed, or we're all just burnt out by all the nuttiness of the world and how exhausting it is, like, it's hard to justify sitting down and really have to kind of pay attention. What happened last episode, or who's this character again? And like, I'm a reasonably smart guy. I should be able to keep up with it, but it's exhausting to try to like remember everything, and to be able to sit down and just know that, like, okay, I know these faces, I know the characters, and right off the bat, like, not that they're spoon feeding me the information, but they lay out the stakes. Here are the consequences. Here's the cost. Here's what we need to do. How are they going to get out of it so that, we can watch an episode next week? And like, that is a very satisfying meal. It's a reason why that format works. And bringing it all back to the idea of craft and learning as we go. Like, I'm trying to draw away from that. Like, how can I make sure that each, relatively short chapter that I'm publishing, how is each one a nice little nugget where it's enjoyable? There's a start and a middle and a finish in each one, and you feel as if like that was satisfying, but I want to find out what happens next. But I'm glad the Strange New World has figured that. I'm glad that Quantum Leap apparently is also kind of re-engaging, and maybe other shows have been doing this all along, but like I think a lot of shows got sucked into wanting to do what all the big boys were doing, right? Like, we want to be The Wire, we want to be Sopranos, and a lot of times you don't have 10 or 12 episodes of story, man. Like, yeah,
or these writers that are capable of writing one story, one season, and pacing it out. And again, I think that's a tough skill.
Yeah.
And I mean, so that's the thing. As much as you want to do what everyone else is doing and do the hot binge watching format, I don't know, man. Again, if you don't have the ability, it shows, and we end up being disappointed. Well, good luck with, again, it's at zestworld.com, everybody. That's the place to go to. The Unchosen, and I'll show you the image once again. Boom. There it is. And also remind everyone, too, the prologue is available now. The first chapter right now, subscription only, but a week from Friday is when you'll read the next chapter. And is it going to come out, David? What kind of schedule do you think per chapter?
So I'm working up to every 2 weeks. I think that this next chapter is going to be, it'll end up being 3 weeks, and then I'm working on every 2 week after that. Sometimes you get sick, life happens, but I'm aiming for 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No, I'm just curious. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, hey, man, honestly, I do intend to have more Zest World conversations. Maybe let's see if there's a final question here.
Yeah.
What do we get? Well, just a comment from Uzeb that he will check it out. So that's
awesome.
Good to hear, man. And David, as always, man, great to see you, and good luck with Unchosen. And also looking forward to hearing what the Jinx World Bendis announcement is. I'm glad it's been germinating all this time, and now it's getting close to finally being a reality. So that's terrific.
Absolutely.
But hey, man, no, as always, really glad to see you. I hope we see each other face to face sometime in 23.
I hope so, man.
Hopefully. But yeah, good luck. With everything going down in Austin and everything, and the kids, and I hope everything's cool.
Thanks so much, John. Again, always wonderful coming on. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, bud. Tomorrow night, everybody, I will be talking to Paul Kupperberg, who, longtime comic book guy going back to the Bronze Age, and it has a new book that I am so excited for. He's got a Kickstarter campaign for it, and he has interviewed a lot of his peers that started with him in the 70s and 80s, and he's just talking about that great period of the Bronze Age, what it was like, what everybody was doing. And I'm thrilled about the notion, and I think they're really fun people to hear the great stories of the DC and Marvel bullpens and the like. So we'll talk about that tomorrow night. Until then, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.